Hello and welcome to the White Collar Fitness Radio, the ultimate podcast for professionals striving to achieve optimal performance in today's fast-paced age. I'm your host, Bruno Dalladoni, online body transformation specialist and founder of the Health Coach Fitness. I'm here to help you optimize your health and fitness, even if you're short on time. Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're discussing machines versus free weights. What is, in fact, best for your gains? So, obviously, a bit of a classic debate, let's say. Should you be using free weights more? Should you be using machines more? Are machines just for beginners? Should you progress onto free weights as you get a bit more advanced? Are bars better? Are dumbbells better? So on and so forth. So, first, why does this matter? And from where I'm standing, it matters because so many people get confused by this, for one. And for two, they don't really understand the difference and they don't really understand how the different exercises, whether they are fixed path machines, whether it is free weights, whether it's a bar, whether it's a dumbbell, whether it's the cables, how all of that stuff fits in together for you to get maximal gains. So let's break it down, starting with machines. The pros, it's a fixed path. Now, why does this matter? Because it requires less stability. You can get yourself into position and move, which allows you to focus more, if not entirely, but definitely more on the target muscle itself. So say, for example, you're doing a seated chest press on a machine, whether it's pin loaded or plate loaded, that in and of itself doesn't really matter for this discussion. But say you're doing that, well, you're not having to think quite as much about shoulders, about stabilizing, about back positioning, about all of these different things. You can really almost hone into your pecs, to your chest muscles as you're going through that movement, which does two things. One, it allows for greater mind-muscle connection. It's a fancy term to basically say your brain's ability to contract that muscle is a little bit more dialed in, let's say. And two, the way you do that is you consciously, with your brain, put your attention on the target muscle that you're moving. So in this case, the pecs. Well, it's much easier to do that when you're also having to think less about other things. So if you're not having to think about what your shoulder's doing, what your core is doing, how should you be pushing through your feet, where's your back, all of these things, it's much easier to then just hone into your pecs and feel them work and really put attention on them. The other thing that it does is it allows you to push much closer to failure, actual muscular failure, without needing someone there to stop the bar from crashing down onto your face. Let's be honest, that wouldn't be ideal. So, by having a fixed pin, well, I'm saying a fixed pin, but by having a fixed path machine, well, if you can't do it, you can then just, not do it. And the chances of injury are obviously a bit less. Always there is some inherent risk of injury getting too close to failure, or maybe even going past failure, but that's a different discussion for a different time, especially if you don't have a spotter with you. So having that fixed path machine there will allow you to get much closer, much more safely without a spotter. Now, naturally, the cons is that you're not using those stabilizer muscles quite as much. So potentially, and I'm not saying this as gospel, so just take it for what it is, but potentially there might be a little bit less carryover from the gym environment to real life, to real movement, sports, so on and so forth. Not always, and obviously, if you're using your machines as part of a comprehensive program, then obviously completely ignore this. But as a general rule, if the only thing you're doing is machines, then maybe there might be a little bit less carryover. And the other thing that obviously we need to take into account is that machines aren't designed for you. They're designed for specimen A, human body A, and the likelihood of you being human body A are actually quite low. Everybody's got different limb lengths, different joint positions, different, all sorts of different stuff, different heights, different ranges of motion, so on and so forth, which mean that machines are there as almost as a template of what you may be able to do. And then this then almost takes us down a bit of a rabbit hole. We won't go too deep into it, but it's about machine setup. Most people don't know how to set up their machines properly. And let's be honest, why would they? I don't really know all that much about, I don't know, industrial metals and trading those industrial metals because it's not my job. I don't have to know about any of that. Now, if I choose to know some of that, is more like a hobby. So it's out of interest rather than I have to know it, therefore I know it in actual fact, quite some detail. And so most people that go to the gym, they don't have to know this stuff. They kind of have a bit of a guess. They might Google it, but it's a very cursory sort of knowledge that they have, as opposed to understanding how they should, in fact, set up those machines for themselves, for their body shape, for their height, for their limb length, so on and so forth. So if you don't have that knowledge, you might not be hitting the right stuff that you want to hit because, well, you don't know how to put your body in the position to hit that body part. Hopefully that makes some sense. Next, free weights. Pros, obviously, requires, this is a pro and a con. So it does require more muscle coordination. Now, the pro for that is that it may lead to some better overall strength and athleticism because you do need more coordination. Big pro is that obviously it will mimic more closely natural movement patterns. And what I mean by that is how your body wants to move, because you control that path of motion as opposed to it being a fixed path machine, where the machine literally moves up and down in a single direction, in one way. Depending what exercise we're talking about, it may be a little bit more efficient in training multiple muscle groups at the same time. So if you think of a squat or a deadlift, you're not just hitting the legs. So for squats, for example, you're not just hitting your quads and your glutes. You're also hitting your back and your abs and potentially some of your shoulder stuff, depending how you're holding the bar. If it's a safety bar, a normal bar, a front squat, an overhead squat, whatever, it doesn't matter. Point being, you're using a lot of other stuff to be able to perform that squat. Same with a deadlift. You're actually attacking those scapular retractors, so your traps, your rhomboids, so on, quite hard by just holding the bar in place. So one can make an argument that you're getting a little bit more bang for your buck depending on the exercise. Now, a big con, depending where you are on that fitness journey, is that a lot of these free weight exercises do require a higher skill. So the requirement for your ability to move, your ability to contract the muscle is higher. There's a larger chance of your technique breaking down, your form breaking down, if you don't have that experience. If you haven't built up the ability to hold your shape as you fatigue. And naturally, there is a higher fatigue on those stabilizing muscles, which then can lead to that technique breakdown, that form breakdown. So there is an interplay between fatigue, skill requirement that goes almost hand in hand. And depending how new to the gym you are, or maybe how new to training really hard you are, this can in fact be not only a limiting factor, but it can also be, and I'm not saying it is for a fact, everyone is different, but it can potentially be there might be a slightly higher risk for injury. Let's go with that. So there is obviously a formula, and if you've never walked into the gym before, you're a complete beginner, a complete gym virgin, one might say. Having more fixed path machines may be better as you start to learn to contract the individual muscles. Now, this might take you 6 months. maybe a bit longer, which just sounds wild to most people. But a little bit like if you've never even looked at a violin in your life, I wouldn't put a violin in your hands and go, play me Beethoven. Now, I understand that this is a little bit different, but there is still a skill requirement and you need to build that skill. Now, for you to successfully play Beethoven on a violin, it might take you 10 years. Luckily for you, weightlifting isn't that difficult. So, but it might take you 6 months, 8 months, a year for you to really understand how to contract. And the other problem that we come to here is that when I say beginner, and I obviously just said if you've just come into the gym, a beginner doesn't necessarily mean someone that has only just come into the gym. A beginner is someone that's only just starting to train hard. So you might have been going to the gym for the past 10 years, but if you haven't trained seriously, then to be honest, you're still a bit of a beginner, because it's less about just rocking up to the gym and more about consciously putting attention in contracting the right stuff. Makes a big difference. Like I say, that might take you 6 months, a year. Everybody's a little bit different. And then as you do that, you might want to introduce some free weights slowly, now and again, to start engaging some more stabilizer stuff. As you start to progress, then a nice mix of free weights and machines will be good. A point to make here is that machines have a whole nother purpose. So do free weights, but depending on what you're doing and how you're attacking, machines can be a great way to help rehab. So if you've got a bit of an injury or you're taking things a little bit quite slower because you've tweaked something or you've hurt yourself somehow, machines can be a great way to ease you back into the fold. Again, by removing variables, aka your stability component, your bracing component, although you might still have to brace, you'll be able to focus more cleanly on the injured tissue, on the whatever it is that you're trying to rehab. So, and again, obviously work with someone. Don't just listen to this and go, I know what I'm going to do for my ACL that is completely bust, right? Take all this stuff with a pinch of salt, but it's here for general knowledge, let's say. So what should your takeaways from this be? Well, are machines more for beginners than for advanced lifters? Yes and no. Okay, say the answer to every single question you have about either gym or nutrition or fitness or anything really is the least sexy answer. It depends. Now, fixed path machines will help new lifters big time to build the skill to contract those tissues, to help them understand how their body moves or wants to move, to help them potentially find better positions that fit with their body better. But also, very advanced lifters will also use a load of machines because it allows them to target the stimulus more effectively to where they want it. And if your goal is to get absolutely jacked, then perhaps targeting that stimulus might be what you want to do. So there is, as always, no right or wrong answer. And it does, in fact, very much depend. Now, free weights can be pretty invaluable once you nail down that technique, you nail down that mind-muscle connection, and you nail down how to stabilize your body and your joints to be able to push through effectively. So really don't view it as either or, and use both. If you are at that stage, use both strategically based on your goals, based on your experience level, and also your recovery needs. Remembering that free weight, because there's a higher skill demand, usually, not always, but usually there will be a higher recovery demand as well. So, as always, it's important to take a second and really ask yourself what it is that you're trying to achieve and then pick the right tool for the job. Hopefully, guys, that was helpful. Hopefully, you liked that episode. Please like, share, subscribe, send it to your friends. And as always, I'll see you